keep it going for the one, the only, our pal, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Disney legend, Don Hahn.
Disney legend Don Hahn. I am so glad you're here. It's bright and early. We have an amazing, amazing panel for you today. Being a Disney legend is, it plays with your mind a little bit because to me, Disney legends are people like Mark Davis and Mary Blair and Bob Gurr, people that have worked with Walt. So to be included in the same sentence as that is humbling, I think is the only word for it. But our guests today are all on this journey of a very special day for them because tonight at the Honda Center, they too will become Disney legends in the same sentence as all those people. So it's a big day, a fun day, and we're going to get started in a second. I have a special guest with us today. The gentleman who is a sculptor who designed the Disney Legends trophy. So if you've seen it, and you will see it tonight, it's a beautiful sculpture. And he's here with us today, sitting in the front row, Andrea Favalli. Andrea, would you stand up and wave for the audience? Amazingly gifted person, and thanks for the trophy. It's really good. It's really good. We're going to jump in. The first of our panelists. Oh man. These introductions could go on for hours. I could spend hours with each one of these people. But first up, costume designer. One of the first, if not the first costume designer to be acknowledged as a Disney legend. Please welcome to the stage, Colleen Atwood. We'll get into your work in a second. Next to the stage, again, so much to say about this gifted person who served the Walt Disney Company in so many different ways. Please welcome soon-to-be Disney legend, Martha Blandings. This next gentleman I have known for a long, long time, happily so, an animator who animates Mickey Mouse. So in a way, he is Mickey Mouse. Please welcome Mark Hinn. An extraordinary Imagineer, explorer, creator of worlds, Joe Rohde, ladies and gentlemen. How you guys doing?
Good, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, good. Big day today. I know. I actually agonized over what to wear today because Colleen is here.
You did well.
Thanks, yeah, I didn't agonize that much. So I think that, I want to start out with storytelling, because I think the thing that unites us all, and what makes Disney special, whether it's the parks or any kind of entertainment, is the storytelling. And it's what Walt Disney stressed himself, and what you folks all stress in your work. And I think that's what's crucial and what's magical. People talk about the Disney magic. Well, it's, as human beings, we crave storytelling. It's our coping mechanism. You talk about this a lot in your work, and I've heard you speak about everything from, at the Explorers Club to your work about Disney. Joe, what's that storytelling mean to you in your work? How does that manifest itself in how you approach something, like the Olani, or something like all the things you've done, which is, your body of work is spectacular. Talk about storytelling and what you've done in that time here.
Well, to me, story when we say this word story, we're talking about something that means something. There's something underneath.
Right.
We pay attention to the story because as it unveils itself, as we keep unwrapping it, it's like it gets richer and more meaningful, and we realize we're not just taking our time listening to a thing that happened.
Yeah, yeah.
We're listening to something that has meaning, that we can use, that we can live, that we can feel, and that's what makes it a story.
Yes. Yeah, and that's something that even sitting here today as a community, wanting to hear your stories is part of that. It really is. I mean, Colleen, you do that in a very character-based way. You're creating story by trying to use your work to help the actor, the director, create a piece of storytelling. How do you approach that? Do you think about that? Is it intuitive? What's your sense of that character creation?
Well, for me, again, it begins with a script, what the story is.
Yeah.
And then my job is to help figure out how to tell the story in a way visually that can connect with an audience. So if somebody's a prince, for instance, it's kind of nice if they can be a prince that you believe is also a person, that isn't just there in some stiff, fancy outfit to be a prince. The same with the princess. I think that if you can connect the humanity of a character within the story, no matter what their level of existence is in the world, rich, poor, famous, invisible, by doing that, then you've done your job telling the story. That the audience, somebody will go, oh, I know that guy, I know who that is.
Yeah, you can relate to it on a personal level. And even Martha, I was thinking about your career, which is spectacular. And as a tour guide at one point in your career, it's almost the ultimate front line of storytelling for Disney, because you're not just walking around waving your arms. You're giving your guests, you're imparting to them story about the nuts and bolts of the park, but also the history of the park, and also trying to give them a day that is really special. So in a sense, you're where the boots on the ground storytelling for for the audience. Do you agree? Was that kind of how you approached it, or felt about it, or look back on it now?
No, I agree. Many of our guests know a lot about Disney and Walt Disney, Disneyland, our Imagineers, you, and they have questions. And it was more of me validating their questions and answering their questions for them. And then I took that from being a tour guide, and then when I went into special events and creating an event, you tell a story because I'm working around the merchandise, but you want more than just the merchandise. You want the experience. And so I'm lucky because I was able to have people like you and Joe Brody to be a part of the event and tell your story. That's what they wanted to hear.
Yeah.
They wanted to hear that and more.
Yeah, isn't that funny? I mean, you really notice that because there's such a hunger for that I don't see in there's certainly other theme parks and other places out there in the world. But there's something about Disney that has that at the core of it all. And Mark, you've experienced that too. Just to kind of finish that idea, we all think of Mark as the ladies' man, and not in a.
My wife's down here. Be careful.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. You have this gift to be able to capture appealing, I'm using an Eric Larson word, appealing characters, and have animated Belle in Beauty and the Beast, and Jasmine, and so many absolutely beautiful characters, Mulan and Mickey Mouse. That appeal and that character creation is like a gift you have. And like all of you, I know it's been a hard-fought, difficult gift at times. What's that like when you sit down with a blank piece of paper and go, oh man, I'm entrusted with this character that has to fill a place in this script? Is that nerve-wracking?
At times. And well, particularly when I animated 3 of the princesses kind of back to back to back. That was, when I got to number 3, I was like, oh boy, because I don't want to just repeat what I did on number 1 and number 2.
You were really good at it though.
So, but...
we all think of you as a princess.
But no, it's as you've talked about, and you know, because you and I kind of grew up in the same environment. It's about character,
Yeah.
and that's what Eric Larson, as you mentioned, was always kind of beating into our young brains about character and sincerity and individuality. You know, when Walt, you know, talked about the seven dwarves, they could have just as easily been, you know, all seven of the same, but he made it, you know, seven very distinct individuals, which was kind of a pattern that was established, I think, early on.
Yeah.
That all the animators, you know, whatever the characters were, because I've done everything from princesses to mice and cats and dogs and crazy rabbit in there too. So,
Yeah.
you know, but it's all about the character. It's all about creating a unique character.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Eric Larson, one of the Night Old Men, who was your mentor. Joe, who were your mentors when you were coming up? Not only at Disney, but just in general, or early movies you saw, things that made you think like, oh, I would like to do that. I would like to be a world builder.
I grew up on film sets because my dad was a cinematographer.
Really?
And by good fortune, he tended to work on films that a little boy would want their dad to work on.
Cool.
So I had the privilege of like crawling around on the original Planet of the Apes,
No.
Ape City Village, when it was empty, you know, and abandoned. He worked on Batman, and he worked on this science fiction Irwin Allen TV show called Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Yeah.
And so you have to be really old and obscure to remember that.
Show of hands, who's old and obscure? Thank you.
Anyway, so in a way, my mentors may have been invisible to me in that they were the set designers of the sets of these films
Yeah.
that I was privileged to be able to see at such a formative age,
Yes.
such a formative age, that I never did look at things without the idea that someone is behind this.
Right.
Someone made this.
Right.
Even my first trip to Disneyland, I already had this sense of like, people made this.
Yeah.
This is a work of art that people made.
Yes.
And yet it is convincing, yet it is full of emotion.
Right.
And once I got to Imagineering, Herb Ryman was one of the people who I attached to. We'd go over to his house, and the thing that impressed me was, of course, he's a draftsman, he can draw.
Yeah.
There are also like hundreds and hundreds of books
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
And that also was something very formative to me. This is the whole thing about things being about something,
Yes,
right?
yes.
This is a picture, but this picture resonates and has meaning and has power because of those books.
Yeah.
Because what's inside the brain of the guy who drew it, and that comes from experience and from study and from knowledge,
Yeah.
and that creates the depth,
Yes.
in my opinion.
And those guys and girls were so well traveled. They had bigger lives than I think, certainly that I did. You know, I think of Mark Davis, who traveled to New Guinea at a time when it wasn't easy to go to New Guinea, you know, to be able to do that. Colleen, you pull a lot of that world reference into your work and deal with a lot of cultural references and then spin it to get something like, you know, Alice in Wonderland or take a circus movie like Dumbo and spin it into something that is perfect for the cinema. What are your inspirations? Who are your mentors kind of coming up that kind of filled your bucket with those inspirations?
Well, I think I grew up in a very, like, a million miles away from even knowing what made a movie. And so for me, it was like the great escape to go to a movie and see like The Pit and the Pendulum, or like the old horror films
Cool.
that I grew up with. And then re-educating myself later with some films that were older films, like the musicals from the 40s and 30s and early Disney. Like my first movie memory is of Snow White. It's the first movie I remember from my childhood. But I think for me now, like that it's really beautiful, like when you do a job like Memoirs of a Geisha, to explore a culture, do it within the period, but again, I was really afraid, you know, when you are culturally exploring another world, to make it, you either decide to make it perfect within that parameter, or you make a discovery. And when I did that movie, I was in Japan and I went to a display in a big department store in Tokyo, which they do in Japan a lot. They're very reverent about history and art, and they have it in shows in department stores and places that people actually go to
Right.
just see it by accident,
Yeah.
which is really a great idea. But I guess they have it at SoFi, which is cool. But anyway, I saw this show of an artist from the 30s, a Japanese illustrator, and the interpretation of the kimono and stuff set me free. I was like, okay, I can do
Really?
what I'm seeing
Yeah.
without feeling like I'm really, gonna offend people and not do the right thing because I'm doing it in a different time on different bodies
Yes.
and all that sort of thing. So you can use museums. I mean, I take it everywhere. I take it from the street. I'm a total thief. Whatever.
Well, it's what is the Picasso saying? Good artists borrow, great artists steal. But that's so true. I mean, it's what you're talking about, the books, the storefronts, that kind of thing. Martha, I know your family is a big reference to you in terms of your twin sister, who's lovely. She asked me to say that. And I know your family growing up was a big influence on you, on not only your professional life, but just on how to treat people. And I think that's something you are a master of, and a large part of your legacy is leaving that to all the people you've worked with and all the people at Disneyland that you've kind of influenced. But talk a little bit about your family and your beginnings and why that became the core of kind of who you are.
I knew Mary was going to be in this panel discussion one way or another.
Yeah,
I just didn't know exactly how.
it's so pushing.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Yes. My roots of what I am, of who I am, comes from my mother, my Aunt Ella, and my Aunt Ellie's, and my godmother.
Mm-hmm.
And they taught it was a lot of women in our family,
Uh-huh.
and they taught all of us, number one, you don't judge people by their color, you judge them by them, by their personality, by what they say. And you don't, and I am a firm believer in that, and I think that anyone in this audience that has come to any of my events knew that that's the way that I was.
Yes.
It's just, and I wanted to make sure that, to me, this is my home, and you're coming to my home. I want you to be comfortable. I want you to have a good time. And I did the same thing with you, and then you too, Joe Rody. And I'm really sorry that I never did anything with you, Colleen or Mark. And if I want to tell you, if I was working, I'd be on it, okay?
You would be.
I'd be
Yeah.
on it and trying to find out when we could do something. But anyway, back to your question. But because you wanted to make them feel comfortable. To be honest, my dream wasn't to work at Disneyland.
Yeah.
My dream was to be an elementary school teacher. That's what I wanted
Really?
to be. Yes. And then I got an opportunity, and I took it in college and decided once I got here, it's like, oh my God, I'm liking this. But I have to go back to Mama and Daddy and to Aunt Ella and my Aunt Ellie's and my godmother for what they taught me, because they are my strength.
Yes.
They are my spine. They are the ones that I looked up to make sure that I did the right thing.
Yeah.
And that I made people happy, because that's what they were about.
Because they had a really interesting past too, didn't they?
They did. My mother and father, my daddy was a Pullman porter, so he came in on that Pullman porter group. So they're from the North, they're from the Carolinas.
Yes.
And he traveled on the train, and then once he got to Los Angeles, he really liked it. So he sent for my mother, and they came here, and they came to Santa Monica first. And so when they got here, they were live-in maid and butler. They worked for many of the celebrities. They worked for Johnny McBrown. They worked for Gene Fowler. They worked for a lot of other of the celebrities, being a maid and butler, and they were amazing. And they loved them.
Yeah.
And they interacted with Fritz Skelton, Jack Benny.
cool.
They interacted with all those people. we wasn't born yet, so we didn't get to interact
That's
with
okay.
them. Yeah. And then it was 15 years later, and they had their first babies, which was twins, which was me and Mary.
Once again.
Yeah, she's sitting right there. Yeah, it was Mary and I. And then after that, we have two brothers, and it was
Yeah.
2 years later was Robert, and 2 years later was my brother,
Yeah, yeah,
Richard.
yeah.
And so, but Mama made sure that she exposed us to a lot of different things, and so did my aunts. I was a debutante. They made sure that
We all
went
think of
to-
you as a debutante, by the way.
They made sure that we went to see the orchestras. We went to concerts.
Oh,
We went
so
to.
valuable.
My mother worked in the community. She was a community leader.
Yes.
In every school I went to, she was a PTA president.
Really?
So, but she was known in the education department.
Right.
She was one of the first parents to help create this Head Start program in South Central Los Angeles.
Really?
And my daddy, he worked for TWA. He also worked for the Doheny's. He was their butler and his driver and maid, and he worked for, and they loved him. She loved us also, and as a matter of fact, she gave my sister and I our first name, Mary and Martha.
Really?
Yes.
Wow, that's
It was
such a
her
Los
first
Angeles
name.
story.
Yes. So I could talk all day, but I know you got other people on
And we're not going anywhere. We are not going anywhere. This is
We're
about
not
you.
going anywhere.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's my family, and everybody can say this, but I get to say it. I had an amazing family.
Yeah.
I had an amazing mother and father, and they seemed like they knew who that village that you live in, because it takes a village to raise your kid. They knew exactly who to put in their village to make sure that we become who I am. And
Yeah, and humble beginnings sometimes. I mean, Colleen, you were in Yakima, Washington, is that right? How the heck did you get to this?
I don't know. But when I was actually from an even smaller town called Quincy, Washington.
Oh, wow.
Really small.
Quick parents in the audience. Yeah.
Who's been there? But the only thing I wanted to do was get out of there. So nothing was wrong with my parents. They were great people.
Yeah.
But I always knew I just didn't belong there.
Yeah.
I always knew there was something else out there for me. It took a while to find it, many dead ends. But still, I eventually got there. I had a kid in high school who's now in her 50s. I have 3 grandkids, a great granddaughter, and they're all here at Disneyland.
Oh, great.
And all those things happened, and at the same time, I started working, selling clothes in a department store, very high-end clothes in the early 70s, and I was really good at it. I knew how to, why, I don't know. I knew how to sew 2 things together to make it one thing if somebody wasn't the right size.
Right.
I was such a hustler. But I was there in a very, great time for style, the early 70s. There was, Saint Laurent, and all those people were doing great clothes. So I learned a lot from doing. I went to art school at the same time. And then the buyers took me to New York, and I fell in love with New York City. I fell in love with the place, and I go, I'm gonna go here, and I wanna work on movies. By then my daughter was in her high school years, and I go, I wanna move there and work on movies. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just had always loved movies, and I saw suddenly that door opened, and I saw the possibilities of it. I walked through that door. I moved to New York City with $500 in my pocket. And I couldn't even open a bank account because there wasn't enough money to open a bank account in New York City. So I finally found one sympathetic man. But I found little jobs. I just kept doing things, and eventually I got a job on a movie working for Patrizia von Brandenstein, who was one of the first women allowed to be a production designer in this world on films, on Milos Forman's Ragtime. And I got the job because the person was supposed to show up to be the PA in the art department didn't show up the first day of work. And I'd met her daughter by chance and said, if any job, you know, I'll work for free. I don't care. I just want to learn.
Yeah.
And I answered the phone. I was home. It was before cell phones, buzzers, any of that. And I answered the phone, and I got my first job. And what my job was making hats and things with her daughter Kimberly for set dressing for ragtime.
Right.
And the production designer, or the costume designer, kept taking my hats off the stands and putting them on people. And I went, and I didn't know it, but Patrizia told me afterwards. And she goes, you know, you're really good at making hats. And I was totally faking it. I never made a hat in my life.
You know, we all are
But
faking it, yeah.
But I've looked at a million hats, and I knew how to, I love figuring out how things work.
That's amazing.
And that was kind of my first job, and, you know, many years of really struggling, you know. But still, I learned more. I just got better at it, and, you know, then I got to meet Jonathan Demme and do his movies.
Yes.
You know, Michael Mann, Tim Burton. You know, it just, when you start working with people like that, then other people become interested in you, and they go, well, if they can work for them, you know, maybe they know what they're doing. And that's kind of how it progressed for me.
You've done well. It's true, those humble beginnings, and the like moral of the story is when opportunity presents itself, take it. It's like that luck and opportunity that you're home and the phone rings, or, you know, that the job comes along, because I think we all share at times in our lives that kind of common story. Mark, you're from the great state of Ohio.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
What was your road into animation and Disney?
Well, real quickly, it was a dream. It was a boyhood dream for me. Maybe a lot of you have heard my story. But yeah, I grew up in Ohio, and you know, people used to ask, you know, so Mark, what are you going to be when you grow up? And I'd say, I'd love to be a Disney animator. And they'd kind of go,
Yeah, good luck with that.
okay, yeah. So, and I think even my parents were a little okay, but they were very encouraging, never, you know, discouraged me in
And
any
you
way.
made it to Cal Arts.
Well, I made it to Cal Arts, and that was kind of the back door, because I tried going through the front door by sending portfolios directly to the studio, and was turned down 3 times. The studio first said, maybe you're interested, send us another portfolio. I sent another portfolio, and they said, stay in school. and I stayed in school, and I kept working at it, and the 3rd time I said, I got it nailed down this time. And I sent it off, and they, Don Duckwall.
Yes, the head of animation, and I'm not making this up, his name was Donald Duckwall.
Don Duckwall, who I never met. But anyway, I got a letter from him finally, and he basically said, you know, it wasn't that I wasn't a good artist in any fashion, but he said, I have this kind of, you know, emblazoned in my mind that I might not have the artistic talent to travel the narrow roads that our animators travel.
Boy, was he wrong.
So then
But like everybody has that discouraging story in their background. I mean, I do, I'm sure we all do.
But then I got to Cal Arts. So Cal Arts was, I basically took that same portfolio that had been rejected, retweaked it a little bit, and sent it off to Cal Arts, because a friend of mine from high school, had given me the catalog. Remember catalogs, college catalogs.
Little paper thing.
Then there was the Disney character animation program. And so I sent my portfolio in and was accepted.
And when you got to Disney, a lot of times you think like you get to Disney and you sit in Burbank for 40 years or whatever, which there's a fair amount of that. But you had a really interesting career, because when the Disney MGM Studio Tours opened, which I still call the Disney MGM Studio Tour, you went to Florida and helped open that studio, which was unusual. And it was a little bit of a fishbowl, if you guys remember, of a studio where people would walk by, they would tour all the time, look down into the work areas. And you did it, I think, for a really noble reason, which was you felt like if they're gonna open a studio there's a risk that it's gonna be kind of B-level work, and you wanted to influence that studio and make it as good as you could.
Absolutely. I mean, to be honest, I didn't like the idea at first. And
Really?
It took a better part of a year to kind of, you know, a lot of time in prayer and just talking with my family. And finally, you know, I had a meeting with Peter Schneider, who kind of turned things around for me, and he expressed the importance of having my presence there. But like you said, if they were going to put the Disney name on a new studio, I wanted to make sure that it was Disney.
Yeah.
And it was a big sacrifice, but in the end, it worked out really well.
What was interesting about that studio is there were always people touring through, and you know, just people who had brought their families to Walt Disney World, and you had some really interesting people tour through your desk. In particular, there was a woman and her 2 boys that came through one day. Can you tell that story?
Well, I've had the pleasure of meeting Princess Diana. And yes, we had kind of an open door policy. Max Howard, who was English, we had just kind of this standing order. If there were celebrities or anybody visiting the studio at the park wanted to come through, they were more than welcome. And they used to have a weekly celebrity event where they put their hands in the cement and do the Grumman's thing.
So what's that like? Princess Diana comes up to your desk and says,
hello. No, she was very quiet, and you know, we knew she was coming, or the possibility that she might come by, and everybody's like, you know, what's the right protocol? Do you bow? Do you not speak until you're spoken to? And we were like, Max, what's the right English protocol? And so, but she came through, and she was as sweet as could be, a lot taller than I expected. It was just her and I guess you could say a lady in waiting, or companion. And the boys, which are interesting, this was what, 94, we had just finished Lion King, and I was explaining to her about the process and how to draw Simba and all that. But we had one of our animators had pet rats in the studio.
as one does.
As one does. And the boys were more interested in the pet rats. So Harry and William were off in another part of the studio playing with this person's rats. But I had Princess Diana in my office for a while, and she was very sweet. And I was telling Don, it was just she was the kind of person you'd want to say, let's just go for a walk. I would just love to just talk to you and just get to know you a little better. So we were in my office chit-chatting, and then around the corner walks Roy Disney. So I had, in one sense, British royalty and I guess Disney royalty in my office at the same time. And Roy was like, oh, nice to meet you, Diana. He said, we were on the same plane. He said, you guys had the nose of the plane, and we were in, you know, premium economy or whatever it was. But evidently they'd all flown over from England at the same plane.
So many of the problems of the royal family can be traced back to you, is what you're saying.
It's my fault, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
But we had a lot of, you know, really unique opportunities. We had President Carter come through with his family, and we did a screening for them for Beauty and the Beast.
Right, I remember
telling you that. Henry Kissinger, Michael Jackson. I mean, you know, a lot of them. I've met most of the original Star Trek crew came through.
Cool.
Except Captain, he didn't come through. But we did have Spock. And one of my favorite ones was Jack Palance.
Yes.
Jack Palance came through, and one of our animators thought it would be fun to have Jack Palance record his voice message on his phone. So it's like, hi, this is Jack. I'm not in the office. You know?
Yes.
Call back later. You know, it was funny. So we had some really fun times getting to meet people.
It's
like
the
that.
perks of the.
It was one of the fun things that we
yeah.
got to do in the fishbowl.
Yeah, exactly. Joe, I want to shift topics a little bit, and it's a big topic, to world building and cultural references. You're kind of the master of that, not only with Avatar, but your work on the Alani, and it's a complicated world. Pulling in cultural references without being seen to be stealing cultural references, building a world of inclusion when you're building something like the Alani. When I went to the Alani, it was the most Hawaiian place in Hawaii. To me, you know, I expected, you know, there's gonna be Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and there was that, but it was so authentic. I feel the same about everything you've done. Can you talk a little bit about that as you approach your world building, as you approach all the cultural influences that you take, that we all take into our work? How do you do that in a respectful way, in a way that's gonna resonate with the audience, but is somehow appropriate to the audience?
So first, I think this has to do with a collaboration itself.
Yes.
When you are the author of a story, you can kind of control the boat yourself.
Right.
And you can bring people in for the ride, but you're kind of driving the story. Collaboration is an end in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It is like exploration. So the first thing you have to put in your mind, and it's very peculiar, is I have no idea what this thing is going to be. I could not possibly have any idea what it's going to be,
Right.
because it's going to become what it is when we start working together. So instead of working towards a physical goal of something you want to do, you have to be working towards a shared value system. So in order to have a shared value system, you have to have a value system,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You have to be able to come to the table and say, I believe this, I work this way,
Yep.
I can be depended upon to do X, Y, Z. I am here in the room to work with you, and I would like to know your value system, and we will look for the places where these values lay over the top of each other,
Yep.
and this will be the arena in which we can work together.
Yes.
So whether it is the biologists, the scientists, the conservation people we worked with for Animal Kingdom, whether it was various indigenous consultants there, whether it's the Hawaiians, the point is that you're not really enlisting them to do what you want to do. You are developing together what you want to do from the conversations that you have.
Right.
So what makes that so wonderful is it's so surprising. You know, it's so unexpected. The thing that you end up with is
Yes.
not what you thought you would have.
Right,
It's,
right, right.
it's just so boring to do what you thought you were going to do.
Yes.
And then you spend 4 years doing it, and when you're done, you're like, yep, that's what I thought I was going
We
to
sure did
do.
it. Yeah, there it is.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
this is much more interesting, to be surprising yourself constantly. And to do that, you basically are giving up a certain quality of control.
Yes.
So in all those relationships, we, the Imagineers, became more as if we have a range of expertise. We do know how things get built. We do know the audience and how the audience sees. We can help you with what you want to say or what you want to be, because we understand how it will be seen, and we understand how it can be built. And so there would be times, for example, with some of the artists on Aulani, where you'd have to say, when this thing you're working on, this image, becomes 120 feet tall, the actual composition of the image is going to have to change. It will not read the way you currently have it as a 1 foot tall comp. That's not going to translate. And here's the ways in which it's not going to translate. So you, the artist, knowing this now, you need to revisit your composition yourself. We're not doing it for you.
Yes.
And think about this in terms of scale. These little micro inflections are going to be 6 feet across. These little, and that means there needs to be more things inside of them that aren't in your head yet.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're sort of technically assisting people, but you're not telling them what to say.
Yes.
Because how would you even know what
Yeah.
to say? Now, I'll admit, this is a pattern of growth across years,
Yeah.
right? So when we worked on, for example, when I worked on the Adventurers Club,
Right.
there's not much of that, right? I bought all those things at the flea market. I really did.
We all thank
and I
you,
stuck
yeah.
them all in that place.
It's so cool.
There's less collaboration there. But I went immediately from that to Animal Kingdom, and Animal Kingdom could never have been done without the participation of these
It
people.
was a one-off. It wasn't a zoo. It was an experience and a hospital and a hotel and everything.
And other people know all that stuff, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so you can't even start thinking about what it might be until you understand what all these other experts, by the way, these are all experts who have no vested interest in the success or failure of a corporate entertainment venue.
Right.
So it's not, they're like, you have to convince them to even be involved.
Right, right.
Right?
Yes.
And then convince them that there's something positive that can come out at the end of this, and then get to the point where they are positively and voluntarily contributing ideas, because we're collaborating,
Yep.
ideas that they also never knew they could think of.
And yet they all feel ownership of it.
Yes.
Because when I was in Animal Kingdom this year, and I walk around that village, and it is time travel and world building like I've never seen before. And it was so unique for its time because of all the cultural references you brought into it, the team you put together. I think all of us would have a team building story, and I want to go to Martha on this topic because you're a great leader, Martha. And you have a team and have had a team for many years at Disneyland that has learned from you and kind of followed your lead on these things. How do you vet that? Who do you look for? Do you train them overtly and sit down and talk, or do you train by example, or how do you team build yourself so you have a support system around you that you feel is going to help you do what you need to do?
It's a combination of things,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not I don't micromanage, you know, because, and I also don't tell people how to do their jobs,
Yes.
okay? So what you want to do is to lead by example, and you also want to lead by other people's example also. So
Mhm.
we talk, and I explain, I let them know what I'm expecting out of them and what we need to do. And also, also a believer, I'm not a yeller, you know, I don't get
Now, your
frantic.
sister is, though.
My sister is
Yeah.
a different story. But I don't, and I've watched other people, if something happens and they're yelling and screaming, it's like, we're all adults, okay? So respect and treat you like an adult. To me, when you respect, it kind of falls into place. So I let them know what my expectations are, and I let them know what it is that we need to do. And then I let them do it, you know?
Yes.
And if they have any questions, ask me. And
Yeah.
you can ask me the same questions over and over and over again. And there are some people who will not answer the same questions over and over and over again. No. Ask me the question, I'll give you the answer, and then we'll go from there. And then just let them do what they need to do. So I'm not throwing them out there and stepping away. I'm throwing them out there, but I'm behind you, but not close. I'm watching, and if you have a problem, then you can come and talk to me, but I'm gonna let you handle it. So I look at it this way: you have a problem, and you're talking to a guest. If it becomes a major, major, major problem, then come and get me, and then I'll help you take care of it.
Yes.
But otherwise, I want you to do it because I want you to know, to learn how to handle these problems,
Yes.
and how to create, and how to create our events, which is
Yeah,
what we
yeah.
did, and I didn't do that by myself. I had a team of people that I worked with, that I partnered with, to create these events.
And that's what you've contributed in a big way to the culture of Disney, which is an evolving thing. It's not necessarily Walt's culture, it's a culture that you've contributed to, you've all contributed to. One of the things that must have been a challenge is you were the first kind of full-time contracted Black tour guide. There were some before you, but it must have been a challenge at times. And I think it's important to talk about that because those social challenges that you might have run into, not only with your job, but with guests and that kind of thing, must have been at times an issue. Was it?
There were some challenges, and I'm gonna tell you about this one event, and they don't exist, the company doesn't exist anymore, so I'm gonna say the name, Hughes Aircraft. They sent a letter to Cicely, our manager,
Yeah.
and they wanted a tall, blonde, blue-eyed, long-legged VIP hostess. Cicely read the letter and she said nobody tells her who to put on the tour.
Good for her.
So what does she do? She gives them a tall, brunette, brown eyes, black tour guide. The other thing that I didn't realize, and Hughes, the guests were fabulous.
Yeah.
Hughes was not. They tried to do everything they could to cause me a problem,
Really?
but I wouldn't take it.
We know
I
that.
wouldn't allow it to upset me. I took care of it. But what I didn't realize is that Cicely was following me, and she watched everything. So she knew exactly what happened. So when they decided to write their letter to complain, she didn't write them, she called them.
They wrote a letter to complain?
They wrote a letter to complain. She didn't write them, she called them to tell them, I followed her through the whole tour. So what's in your letter is not true.
Wow, good for her.
So, and me, can I say one bad word?
Yeah.
I also would tell people, You can tell somebody to kiss your ass without saying, kiss my ass. And I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. We will have that available on T-shirts.
And
Coffee mugs.
when I had to, I did. I would tell them, but I didn't say, I won't say it again, but I didn't say the word.
Yeah.
But I said it so nicely that I did have many people to tell me, I have never been told no or to go to in such a nice way.
It's a gift.
But you know what, another thing, you don't do things to make you look bad. You do things to make you look good. And sometimes you have to choose your battles.
Yes.
Sometimes choosing your battle, the battle that you choose not to fight is the one you win. It's not always the one that you speak up for.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the one that you don't speak up for, and you win.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I was called the N-word, and I had to handle it. I couldn't let it go.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it was someone from our security that said it.
Oh, geez.
And I turned around and I looked and I said, I heard what you said, and the other security guard that was with him, he also said, oh man, do you not know who that is? You shouldn't have said that. So I took his name and I just looked at him and smiled. I was going in to redo one of the candy shops.
Uh-huh.
So I was doing everything I was supposed to do.
Right.
Had my name tag on and everything. I went in, picked up the phone, and called the person in charge of security. Called Ike, and I explained to him the situation, and I just told him, I've never done anything to cause anyone to call me that. I will never do anything to cause anyone to call me that, and I am not putting up with it. And he said, Martha, I'll take care of it. I never saw the security guard anymore, so I'm just assuming that he got fired, but I never saw him again. But
Wow.
it's just sometimes you don't have to yell and scream
Yeah.
to take care of a situation. Sometimes you just take care of it. And I'm a woman of my word, and I speak up. And I am a very proud black woman, and everyone at Disney knows that.
Yes, we do.
And I'm a very proud black woman, but I respect my other partners, my other allied female women, and I speak up for them also.
Yeah.
So it's not just me and my culture.
And thank you for that. I mean, it goes back to that's a huge contribution to Disney culture that you've given, and something you can't put a price tag on. It's something that's hard to talk about even, and is so important and appreciated. That team that you build around you, Colleen, I know you two rely on the same people in many movies. You have a relationship with Tim Burton, a relationship with Rob Marshall, that they always come back to you and things. So you have people not only that you work for, but that you work with you, that's part of your team, that have a sense of your style and your taste. I know I've worked with Tim before, and he really trusts his people, and his, Rick Heinrich's the production designer, and you, and so there's an unspoken trust between collaborators. It goes back to what you were saying, Joe, that communication and how important that communication is. Can you talk about that and how you pick your team and how that's evolved over the years, and what that means to you, that kind of collaboration and communication between trusted colleagues?
Well, the basis of what we do is collaboration from, the bottom up. So for me, I work all over the world and find different collaborators in different parts of the world. But I've met people over the years. I think every assistant I've ever had, whether they worked for me for 3 or 4 jobs, or whether, like Christine Cantella, who's worked with me for 25 years, wrote me the most beautiful letter today. It was just so amazing to me. And that we come together, we get in the room, we gather the team together, and we talk about the job. Everybody can bring it. I don't care. If you have an idea, come tell me what it is, because it might be, like Joe said, it might be something you don't even think of. And then as you travel and as you go in places, you just build a group of people around you by treating them nicely, respecting their work, and expecting yourself, your work has to be the level that you want the people to work for you to have.
Yeah.
If you don't work yourself, you're not going to get great people to work for you. And people intuitively realize that. And I think the reason I have such great teams is because I'm there working with them. I'm not just pointing my finger and having you do this, you do that. I actually am there I look at everything. I appreciate beautiful work and craftsmanship. And I think the people that do that work are often overlooked. I tell directors that, that this person did it, I didn't do that, because it's really important for people to have recognition, even though they're not the head of a department.
Sure.
Everybody doesn't want to be in the line of fire like a head of a department. They just want to make great stuff and love what they do and be part of it, and it's a really beautiful thing about our business.
It really is. And there's a scene that exemplifies that to me anyway, where you had to costume hundreds of people. It's a scene maybe that we don't talk about much, but it's in Dumbo. It's a parade scene. It's a circus scene. And at one time you actually worked for the circus, not as a juggler, but as a costumer. But in Dumbo, working with Tim Burton, there's this glorious circus parade, and not only the uniformed and performers in the parade, but the audience, and selecting colors and levels of value in color that would let the parade stand out and let the audience fade back and fit into a set. I mean, those are hugely collaborative moments, I would imagine, in your life. Can you talk about that scene or others like it, where you show up on a day that you've prepped for a long time, and you have to really rely on a large staff to get something done in a beautiful way like that, that's just art?
On Dumbo, which was a gigantic movie, we had, on that day, 500 background artists.
500, wow.
500 people. That is not including the parade, the featured acts.
Yeah.
That was people, circus workers, audience members. So on that movie, continually, most of the movie, because the area that the set was in was so huge, I had at least 400 extras a day, which involved hair, makeup, wardrobe, it's a period show, costumes, and performers that had to actually perform in costumes, which is a whole other thing than people just getting people looking good in a period.
Yeah.
In that circus parade day, we'd sort of done other stuff with the background. So I created the background costumes for that movie because the period that Dumbo was set in, the real clothes from that period don't fit very many people today. And they're also pretty fragile. So if you have to have them work for 3 months steady, a full 10-hour day in those clothes, they're gonna die on you. And I've actually literally seen them die. They just go and they're done.
Many of us here today have seen our clothes die as well.
This dress just died. So it's really something, I try to preserve those things that still are from the past for moments and places you can put them in where they're not gonna be killed by the job that it is. But that's a side thing. But the performers, the thing is with doing Dumbo, this parade was the penultimate show-off parade of, Michael Keaton's character, and he has his prize in Eva Green, and the kids are there, everybody's there. And the thing is, when you do a movie like Dumbo and you have all these people that are playing the performers and stuff, they all become real to me as a designer. So this was their cleanest, their bestest, all that for that scene.
Right.
So, and it was almost at the end, of course, when we shot it. So you're going back with the stuff you've been wearing, trying to tart it up to make it like another few days. But, we probably started at 4 in the morning and everybody was on set by 8. So it is a military operation. I have people that work for me called supervisors that run the hours and stuff for everybody. And I'm in there helping dress, and then I look at everybody before they go to set and make sure they're good, and then I go over with the principals and get dressed last. So the mechanisms of running those kind of scenes within a movie is a massive team operation.
Yes.
You know, I probably had 50 people dressing people in order to achieve that. Hair and makeup had twice as many.
Yeah.
You know, it's a huge amount of people to mount that sort of beauty. And the thing that I think makes Dumbo look so good is that it isn't all sprites and fake people. It's the real people were there.
Yeah, yeah.
And there's something about that with the clothes and the colors and the way fabric looks. It really made it kind of a special kind of movie in my heart.
Yeah, it's that sequence, if you want to treat, take a look at it again. It's such a masterpiece of what you do. You know, as much as I hate to say, we're on the home stretch here of our time together, and the wisdom you guys impart is breathtaking, so thank you for that. Mark, I have an impossible question, but when you think of being named a Disney legend, and you think of all of our mentors and people that worked with us, and people like Mark Davis and Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston, what does it mean to you?
Oh gosh, I'm still processing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it's an amazing honor. It just, I guess it means in a simple phrase, you know, job well done. You know, well done.
Yeah.
And to know that I'm being recognized as doing a job well, but more importantly, carrying on, you know, having taken the baton from those gentlemen, my heroes, your heroes, and you know, carrying it through what, you know, has become known as the second golden age.
Right.
And now I'm passing it on to a new generation of animators, but to, you know, now take the time to, you know, be recognized for basically, yeah, just the job well done. That means a lot. It
Yeah.
really does.
And rightly so.
Yeah, it's hard to
Yeah.
put it in words anymore.
Joe, I think a question we're all thinking is, what's the deal with that earring?
Well, the earring's been there. The earring is a celebrity, and I am the friend of the celebrity. I travel with the earring, and people see the earring, and they're like, oh, that's that famous guy. Who's this person with him? I started in 1987.
Really?
I did. I started in 1987 because I was going to go on a business trip to Japan,
Yes.
and I had one of those little tiny posts from the 1980s,
Yeah.
and my boss in the model shop had said, you know, you kind of don't look like a Disney employee anyway because of that long hair.
Yeah.
So maybe you shouldn't wear any Disney ID when you're in Japan. Well, that's not fair. I've been working for this company for 7 years.
Yeah.
So I took my Disney 5-year pin, which is a lapel pin,
Beautiful.
and I stuck it through that little tiny hole in my ear, which made the hole bigger.
Yes.
And started a cascade of other decisions.
Yes.
Basically, whenever I go someplace I've never been before, a country,
Yeah.
I look for a hoop-shaped earring, usually ethnic or tribal or something,
Yeah.
but nowadays anything, and it goes in my ear. Now, of course, I have a bowl full of them at home. This is the travel pack.
There's,
One lesson in that
Yeah,
is
you have
that
to.
creativity does involve transgression. I was told not to
yeah.
wear any Disney ID.
Right.
And I did. And this is a thematic issue about creativity. You create not necessarily by doing what you're told.
No, by being the outsider sometimes. Yeah. Well, we love you for it. We absolutely love you for it. One quick thing, Joe. Yeah, there's people out in the audience I know that want to either follow in your footsteps or admire what you do so much. If you could give advice to them or your younger self, it's an impossible question, but how do you advise kids when they come up to you and ask, like, I want to be you?
The strength and confidence to be able to make these kinds of decisions does not come from you. You have to represent something. In order to have the courage to make the kind of decisions you have to make, they cannot be about you.
Yeah.
You have to be about something.
Yes.
So decide what you are about, and you will find it much easier to make these very difficult decisions.
Beautifully said. Wow. Colleen, if you could talk to young Colleen in Yakima, Washington, what would you tell her? Would you encourage her? Would she have had any idea that you'd be sitting on this stage today?
I think that I had no idea what stage I would be sitting on, but I knew I'd be doing something interesting, and that I didn't know the path I was going to take, but I just kept moving forward in time. And I think that doing that and not being afraid, I always say, don't be afraid to die. Don't be afraid to go up and smoke if you have a bad idea.
Yeah.
Do not fear. Just keep moving ahead and trying things, and eventually you'll find your world, your groove, whatever you want to call it, and then you can explode. I also tell people today to put away your phones and look up, look around you, and see the beauty of the sunrise in the morning and the little things that I think people miss a lot today. So when people come to work for me, I always say, please put your phone down. Don't text while you're working, talking to each other. And I think because I came up, I'm so analog, but I came up without all that even though I embrace it artistically, at the same time I think it's really important to look around you and at the people around you, because you learn so much from it, way more than you do.
Beautiful said. Beautiful said. Hi, Martha.
Hi.
We are really lucky because Martha has taken on the last couple of years to write down her thoughts in a book. And I want to embarrass her and plug it right now, because it is a beautiful book, and it's her story, and it's something that's so to actually have it in hand, it's out very soon. To have it in hand and look through and hear more of your wisdom and your experiences, not only at Disney, but just your worldview and things, I think is going to be really important to all of us. How do you put into words a day like today?
I never thought I'd be sitting here. I never thought that I would become a Disney legend. Because after working with many other legends, I understood how important it was, what an honor it is to become a Disney legend. And to be recognized for the work and my accomplishments that I have done at the Walt Disney Company is just unbelievable. I'm like you, I'm trying to, I believe it, but I don't believe it. And I may be okay by tonight. I'm working my way up to tonight.
Yeah. We're with you.
But thank you. And you know what? Thank you to the guests, because during the signing yesterday, every last one of the guests that were in the line told me how much they appreciate what I did, my job.
Truth.
And that, what a wonderful job. And I know, I know I made mistakes, but y'all don't tell nobody, okay? Keep it to yourself, all right? But they were wonderful. And you know how you wish that you're doing something right? They told me yesterday that I did, and I appreciate that.
That's so beautiful. So that's it. I think the amount of wisdom and storytelling and world building and inspiration that you all bring to us is breathtaking. And I thank you for sharing that with us in this last hour and over your long careers. You are more than worthy for this wonderful legend acknowledgement tonight. And we thank you for spending this time with us all. Please thank our guests.